welcome. These will be my thoughts on Runaways Season 2, Episode 13, Split Up. The episode is rated TV-14, so will this video be? There will be spoilers for the show leading up to and including this episode, possibly for MCU and adjacent stuff that came out after, not that came out after, that came out before, and yeah, I think that does pretty much get us to the, another episode that I absolutely loved. Fantastic to be loving one of the, what's the word, finale of the show, because wasn't the case with the first one, but almost this entire season I really loved. So, a few quick YouTube video recommendations. Jose's Professor Jiang's Broken Classroom. Some more news. Why we're not yet freaking out about hantavirus. I know I have more around here. True Blue. Does transitioning change your personality? Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire are in freefall. And Queen Coke Francis, the first conservative gay cruise, was as embarrassing as you think. All fantastic videos. Yeah, so I guess I think I'm going to keep this almost entirely chronological. But yeah, I think I do want to... No, I'm going to see if I can't keep it to that. So yeah, I quite appreciated getting a little bit more information about the aliens. We still don't have a name for them. I hope. Oh wait, Giborim, right? The Giborim, but so I have to be careful not to gender because the magistrate refers to Zavin as that one, which is distinctly gender neutral, and I do suppose that if, depending on what they look like in their original form, hypothetically, there might not be any gender distinction for the Xantar if they're shapeshifters. Like, Zavin says they're still getting used to having a mouth, which is a neat little detail because like it's not something we think about. But yeah, I mean, if you're a shapeshifter and you don't normally have a mouth or shapeshift into something that does, yeah. But yeah, finding out a little bit more, and I appreciate them admitting how corny it is. After the also yeah, appreciate it. I don't think I can put into words in any language known to man how glad I am they didn't try to do that bit in CG that they used, just more traditional 2D animation. And it's not because women are too hard to animate, though I guess Xantarian people might be, but there's just no way that it would have looked quite convincing. And it's also this kind of thing of like, well, I mean, we're not seeing a literal reproduction of it. This is what she's beaming into Carolina's brain, And also the note about, Carolina's like, well, that was invasive. But yeah, Carolina's like, can I look at a hard copy of the prophecy, maybe in English? That's like, and she keeps saying, stop calling me betrothed. Stop trying to make betrothed happen. It's not going to happen. And Nico comes in, and I have to admit, I really thought they were going to smash cut to the intro sequence at Nico seeing Zavin there. And yeah, also Zavin gets on her knees and is like, yeah, it's a very, very uncomfortable situation. And I think that is when we see, yeah, before the intro sequence, we have... But yeah, I feel like I should say at least a little bit more about that. I really appreciate how this complicates things. Obviously, like, one of the things is the relationship between Carolina and Nico, and they were like trying to get back to... I mean, they do love each other. They, yeah. But it was a tiny bit of, it wasn't as good as it has been between them. and now Zavin. And it's again this thing of like, well, Zavin is an alien, Carolina's half alien, half human. Is she going to choose the full human or the full alien? In Nigo's mind, I don't think Carolina's particularly considering Zavin, at least not as... So she doesn't like that word, so I guess I will use a different one. Involved. Her involved. And yeah, then we have Chase and, you know, the Pride. Yeah, Pride explain to him, and we have the thing about, like, you know, we'll use weapons this time, if not, you know, and I really appreciate him saying, you know, well, what do you mean? Like, why? What if not? You know, and I think that does... But yeah, it's genuinely compelling seeing him in this situation, because it is this thing of like, well, he kept saying, you know, he wanted to go home, but it is also, he does kind of believe that they can do good with Pride. And once again, like, I really appreciate them actually... I mean, so far they haven't delved deep into it. It's mostly, you know, part of it is that Chase, you know, there's a kind of messenger, does the message still work situation going on here, because they really don't believe a word Chase says right now. But maybe in the next season, we will see, you know, well, is it gonna be... Because, like, genuinely, you know, there are times throughout human history where, and perhaps Giborim and Xantar, I don't know enough about them to comment, where, you know, yeah, the younger generation has taken something over and radically changed. And, like, to be clear, it's... when it's a very corrupt institution, it's sometimes better to get rid of it and start something new. But certainly, you know, I mean, that's the thing. Like, they don't have to just run Pride. They could, like, you know, what's that term? Like, the venture capitalists or whatever it's called. You know, they could just sell it piece by piece, so that it is impossible for any one person or even group to use the whole thing. But they get, you know, huge amount of money, and they can use that. You know, yes, 'twas ill-gotten gains to begin with, but still, maybe it could be used for something. I will be very impressed if even one person knows what I just referenced there. Anyway, yeah, I think that does... Yeah, so after the intro, the thing about, you know, so Zavin tries food and wants to know how many kingdoms were conquered in the name of this delicious food, which, like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm not the biggest fan of jokes like that. It's like, you know, I mean, listen, I've had that kind of thing. Like, I don't know, I kind of feel like maybe balance it out with something about, like, well, I mean, I don't know, it tastes good, I guess, but it's also kind of making me more hungry. It's not very nutritious. Like, we had better stuff on the, you know, on the spaceship, you know, something like that. I don't know. It feels a little bit... When an American has a line like that spoken by a character, it always... Yeah. But it was kind of funny, and yeah, the thing about, not to be, you know, but we don't really talk with our mouths full, and then Zavin's like, sorry, still getting used to having a mouth. And yeah, the discussion about, we're not really letting them stay, are we? And I think that might be... yeah, that's when we have the thing about, you know, well, you know, we don't really need someone here who doesn't want to be here, because I don't even want to say their name. And then, you know, phone, Alex looks at it, Chase, what did I just say? You know, and then again, that's a Gert joke that worked for me. And yeah, also her being understandably upset, and Alex once again being kind of a jerk, not just... Yeah, I don't know, I kind of get it, but I do also really appreciate, like, I'm sorry, but the rest of this episode, the problems the Runaways end up in, kinda Alex's fault. Like, there was only so much that Pride could do when they didn't know where they were, but by the end of this episode, they're split down the middle. At least Pride only has 2 of the Runaways, not all 3. But it's a very interesting status quo. I'm fascinated to see what exactly they do next season. Also really appreciated the point about, like, well, technically, because of Carolina fulfilling the prophecy, the other prophecy, the human prophecy of the Church of Gibborim, they're gonna be looking for her, which I think is going to come into play. I don't know if it's going to be a major way, but I don't think they just randomly drop that. Here, I think in the next season, there's going to be, because we already know they're real determined. If they find out where Carolina is, and, I could definitely, I don't think they're gonna throw away that possibility, especially because if they free her, she's gonna have to figure out what to do with that. Is she gonna try to use that influence that she doesn't want to be having in order to stop, not just Pride, but the Gibborim? Or is she going to reject them, and could that turn out badly? There are, important people who are killed by their own, current or past followers out of, yeah, because of some kind of perceived, maybe they changed something and it was thought to be, well, this is, they're ruining everything. I just forgot to breathe. Anyway, I think, yes, that does pretty much bring us to the yeah, it was really great throughout this episode. More, some what comes out about the Gibborim people is not new to the audience, but we are seeing characters who need to know, finding out. And that, again, is definitely going to come into play. They're really lining up. I wouldn't rule out that almost the entire third season is going to be about the Gibborim and the Xantar. I forget, I read once if this did go out the way they intended it to, or if it was canceled instead, but I don't know. I think there's a chance that they could properly resolve it by the end of season 3. And it is, they've been building up towards, like, we didn't always know it was aliens, but there's clearly something more. I think it was actually, yeah, I believe the very pilot did set up, because we saw Leslie with the energy thing that the magistrate was inside. Now, yeah, so Alex does answer the phone, and I think what makes the next Gert joke work is that she's not actually wrong. It's this thing of, like, yeah, Chase really screwed them over, and does again later in this episode. His streak is bleak. He keeps screwing things up when he's trying to fix them. Now, let's see. Yeah, the thing about, are they willing to meet? And all 4 of them, like, 100% synced up. Just flip off. That was wonderful. Just fantastic. And I do also really appreciate, so once again, this is not gender essentialism. I'm talking about socialization over, yeah. The fact that the young women are like, no, we don't trust him anymore. And the one young guy is like, I don't know. I mean, maybe we could give it a chance. And it ends up badly. I'm sorry, but a lot of time, women just are better at making these kinds of decisions, in the real world as well. Now, let's see. I think, essentially, like, I get why Alex does it, but it is a mistake, and, yeah, the other 4 realize that. I think the very next thing might be, the part where, yeah, so they do agree to meet, and yeah, I believe the very next thing is them talking about renting for the meeting. Yeah, this episode also moved fast. Like, a lot happened, and they did a really, really great job of changing things up. Like, this is a very different dynamic for the show, and that's how you want to end a season that leads into another season a lot of the time, not always. So that is, yeah, really, really looking forward to seeing. But yeah, and the thing about, Nico and Zavin both, the thing about, yeah, Nico says she'll go, yeah, both of them say they will go with, and then, Zavin, like, takes the form of Nico, and Nico's like, am I really that short? Listen, I'd be the same in that exact situation. I'm not very tall either. And let's see, yeah, Leslie points out, hey, it's kind of creepy, or wait, no, someone said it was, I think it was Carolina who said it was creepy, and yeah, Leslie was like, yes, I agree. And yeah, later in the episode, she still does do it. So she is, Zavin is really struggling with, yeah, accepting these new things, which I think is also something that's going to come into play. I don't know if they will go through an arc where they get to a point where they work on, the kinds of, where they can live up to more of the expectations, or if, I mean, hypothetically, is there a chance that they'll end up going against Carolina too? And I also just love how comic booky this has gotten. Like, this is the kind of stuff I read about. For those who don't know, I read comics. Between 1999 and 2007, I read any comic book I could get my hands on. That wasn't, like, expensive, and well, too expensive, I guess. That was before I was at that time I was not the best at always turning down something I wanted if it was not as inexpensive. That actually is why I stopped reading comics, the cost. Anyway, yeah, this thing of like, oh yeah, by the way, that spaceship that we, that destroyed? Well, there was actually a different alien species on there. That different to the alien species that you just barely know anything about at this point. Yeah, and the one member of this other species, they're actually engaged to, the half human, half alien. Are you following me so far? Do you need, like, a minute, maybe a pad of paper and a pen? And can you keep up, or am I going to have to explain everything? Anyway, I think that does bring us to, yeah, I really did appreciate the thing about, yeah, and Carolina saying, I don't need anyone to protect me. But Zavin, I make my own choices. And that again, I do think is significant, because she does, there are all these different groups and people pulling at her in every which way, and she's choosing to work to stick with the Runaways. And it is genuinely, yeah, Zavin staying behind to take care of, to protect Leslie. That does make sense. And I couldn't help but notice that was a very direct, and it seemed like Zavin, direct request from her involved, and Zavin seemed to agree, and yet she still shows up later. And I do appreciate that is something, American media, sometimes someone will go against what they were, told or asked to do, or that sort of thing. And I guess that pretty much does bring us to the next. Yeah, so they do meet up with Chase, and they do not agree to go back, as yeah, and he tells them about the weapons and the let's see. Yeah, he tells Tina they didn't go for it, and unfortunately, yeah, they were, they got plans inside plans. They were indeed planning on, they had a backup in case it was a no. And we get a couple of things. It said, make every shot count. We can't reload, so they do have something projectile based. And yeah, the drones. I was impressed by. I don't know. Maybe am I just becoming more forgiving of the show in general? But I don't think I saw any like genuinely bad CG on the drones at any one point. There was still a tiny little bit on Old Lace, I think, but yeah, and we do see, they have the thing that makes the affects the speech, which of course means Nico can't cast spells. And yeah, they end up all right, and very clever that all of it is protected against, the drones. Let's see, they can't, whether it's Carolina's powers, the Fistigons, like nothing that the Runaways have is any kind of match. Very nicely done on that. And so begins the chase. And actually, to briefly talk about Chase, so yeah, he goes back to talk to Janet, and they come to realize that Victor is magistrated up, although at this point they're calling him Jonah. And right, also the thing about like, well, I mean, I can adjust the specifications here on the computer, but the weapons are already built. Who did this? I would never have, very, very nicely done on that as well. And also the thing about like, well, Mom, I don't know why you're so upset about the skin problem compared to a tumor, because, yeah, because she saw what Jonah looked like after the yeah, actually this is pretty useful because now I can use Jonah to refer to before the magistrate was expelled from the body of the human once known as Jonah. I guess I should maybe still call him Jonalien just to be completely clear. And they do try, but unfortunately, he's got the Gibborim people version of one of those John Wick bulletproof suits, I think is a... So I've heard. I haven't watched any of those movies yet. I will at some point. Anyway, the chase, really appreciate the way that they all, the Pride also split off to deal with the different ones. And the part where Nico can't say the L word, so the wrong one keeps coming out, and they're, oh, wait, I love you. That was really sweet. And the kissing, and it's just, yeah, I love their love. And that is also definitely something that's going to be significant in the next season. There's no way Nico is going to accept Carolina being a captive. But the let's see, yeah, and also the thing about like, okay, that drone is definitely being controlled by your mom. That's very funny. We sense the disapproval, just the somehow the glare came through. And the let's see, yeah, Alex, am I remembering it right? Is this not at least the second time he's gotten like an expensive car? But yeah, appreciate it. It works. And yeah, a lot of the time I don't think it works when that specific line. A lot of the time versions of that does not work, where they say, I shouldn't have let him play Grand Theft Auto, but you're actually kind of like, yeah, that's the way it works to drive in Grand Theft Auto. So it's like, yeah. And the thing about like, Tina, send the drone away, it's just making things worse. Well, if you lose him, we're not going to lose him. Did you lose him? We did lose him. very nicely done on that. And, you know, they do find the car. And yeah, I genuinely, until it became clear what his clever plan, as Tamara put it, was, I did think Alex was going to shoot his parents. But yeah, genuinely, you know, he did have a cunning plan. It was not unearned confidence. Baldrick. And yeah, the thing about, you know, well, it's linked to a cold case, and, you know, it was just fired. It's in the car that's registered to you. You might as well admit, you know, and yeah, I think there is some chance that this might mean they go away, you know, for good. And that is, of course, like, yeah, Alex wanted them in prison. He wanted all the Pride parents in prison. You know, he just hasn't been able to do that much to get there recently, but that was a major goal for him in season 1. So it makes sense that he would still, yeah. And now we understand completely why he had a gun. It was not to use on anyone. It was to make sure that they would pay for, you know, and yeah, clever call in a cold case tip. I did at first think that maybe he was recording, because we saw him on the phone. We saw him put away the phone, but turns out that was him calling the cops. And yeah, I thought he was recording them with the phone, but they also don't really say that much that's super incriminating. They just don't deny the accusations, so it's not necessarily going to be, you know, they're not going to make a movie about it if it goes to trial. Wouldn't be exciting enough, but I think that does bring us to, yeah, so Gert and Molly, it was really great. So yeah, the thing about, like, listen, we can't hide out here. How did you get to be so strong? I'm supposed to be the older sister. Who do you think I learned it from? That was so sweet. That was just so great. Yeah. And yeah, so they run off in different directions. And so Molly finds some other, yeah, some immigrants from South America. And so while I don't love this thing of, like, weaponizing, the idea of, like, yeah, saying, this is a rapist, a pedophile even. On the other hand, he's trying to do, it's not sexual, but he is trying to do something to a minor against her will, so I do appreciate that. And from what I've heard, it is indeed very true. Like, obviously, it's not only true of South American, peoples, but I have definitely heard, yeah, if they think someone's a pedophile, they are not just gonna let them, yeah, they're gonna try to separate the pedophile from the pedophile's intended target. Which, I don't know. I couldn't help but notice that recently some powerful people don't seem to particularly want justice for survivors of pedophiles. I don't know. Just something to think about. And I guess I'm trying to keep it vague, but I do want to specify I'm not talking about any minority group. The people I'm referring to are cishet white men. Not exclusively, but a number of them are. And certainly the ones who aren't are not inherently worse than the ones who are. Anyway, and she manages to get away and get back to the hostel. That's also, if that drone could speak, I feel like it would be telling Carolina and Nico, get a hostel, you two, or better yet, don't. And I think that there's at least one more thing that I really want to make sure to say. Yes, Gert. Unfortunately for her, Stacy is the one who makes Chasey after her, and very clever of and yeah, she, at first it's regular Stacy, but then, with the hats knocked over, she becomes the new Stacy. She doesn't just have a new hat. And genuinely really clever. You know, she goes in, okay, so how much does this cost? Oh, you know, she gets the price. Can you break 100? I mean, I'll try. Because, like, what are you going to say? No, get out of my store. I don't want to sell to you, person who is clearly loaded and is trying to buy something from it. No, you're going to go as, you know, it's a swap meet. It's not like, you know, there's no... Why would this clerk think that Stacy was up to no good? And fortunately, I think, Dale does show up just in time. Well, yeah, I guess it is fortunate, isn't it? Dale shows up just in time and manages to... Because otherwise Gert might have been in one of those back to tanks, looks like, at the end of the episode. But yeah, Dale shows up just in time to see Stacy as an alien be, you know, yeah, literally use physical force to render Gert unconscious. And thankfully he does manage to get her into the car. And that's, again, like, there's definitely a way for her to get out of that. Like, not in this episode, I mean, but there's going to be, you know, it's also not impossible. Maybe she will be able to talk some degree of sense into him. I liked her saying that she's going to make the dinosaur eat him. And it was great to see them reunited. Yeah. So Carolina, I thought it really... did I already say? I thought it really worked that they split them up. And so they got to have different character interactions all... Yeah. But Carolina, you know, flees for a while, and Magistrate Victor catches up. And yeah, it is revealed that to Carolina that this is Magistrate, and Zavin tries to intervene. Really great bit where, you know, so there's this guy who tries to break into Victor's car and then sees something and says something, and at first we don't know exactly what it is, but obviously that was Zavin. And Zavin did say they could find Carolina anywhere, which is also, you know, that is the thing. Zavin is with, you know, some of the Runaways and Leslie at the very end of the episode and the season, and can find Carolina anytime, anywhere. And I think maybe Magistrate knows that, so he might have some, you know, he might be able to prepare for when they do make an attempt. And yeah, I think that's going to be really compelling in the next season. Which, right, for those who don't know, it's going to be, you know, I'm going to do some Arrowverse and then some Walking Dead live-action franchise. And then I'm going to, and then I'm going to do something else. I guess I shouldn't say exactly which, just in case it is no longer available, but I'm intending to do something else before I return. It's going to be a little while before I return to the show. Anyway, I think yeah, very clever. The thing about, you know, Magistrate uses some tech to, yeah, lock, you know, and then Zavin shows up having taken another form, so that, you know, well, I guess Magistrate doesn't know their current form. But I will also say, at first I wasn't sure that was Zavin until it became clear. And I think, yeah, so ultimately, you know, he does get Carolina back. Now, he says, you know, he's after her because she's significantly more important than Chase. But then there at the end, he says, you know, he might eat her, which at first I was a little taken aback by. But I guess it's because the reason she's so important, he might eat her or feed her to one of the other. Maybe they'll split her. And maybe that will, like, give, you know, an extra boost to their life expectancy or something. But yeah, he's going to restart the Runaways program that stopped earlier in the show. Anyway, the whole thing with Nico was just so freaking badass. I can't even. I think that might be my favorite action scene so far, and I appreciate it's not the one with like the most, you know, superpowers and such, and that is part of why I watch comic book adaptations. But it was really, really cool and very clever. This thing of because like it's one of those cases we already know Nico's gonna finish the fight in seconds, and she does if she can talk. So we have to have this element of she has to take out the things that are keeping her from forming words properly. And they get away with a couple of those would obviously have been F words if not for the TV-14 rating and thus the censorship by tech, which yeah, big tech does like censorship more than one might think. And I think that does yeah, so let's see the right, and apparently they're all three actors are incredible martial artists like that according to the IMDb trivia. So yeah, obviously this is a scene that they've been wanting to find a way to do since the start of the show probably, and they definitely didn't need to get Robert to this place because he would not have engaged in this in it is not that many episodes ago that he wouldn't have gone for this. And then they needed the weapon to explain why Nico isn't just using the wand. And yeah, I think I appreciate that maybe the part with like slow motion and flip and such, maybe that was a tiny bit too like we just watched Matrix and we're a little jealous. But other than that, I thought every bit of choreography really worked. And yeah, I kind of liked that at the end she went smash, and it did kind of look like a Hulk smash. So yeah, and the scene also reminded me a bit of let's just say a scene in live action that has to do with Hulk, where having to take out something that is inhibiting the Hulk's ability to immediately just win. Yeah, really, really excited to see where it goes from here, and appreciate that this episode makes clear, so I've been calling it like an invasion of the body snatchers. Technically there's just the 4, and 3 of them have already found each other, and they talk about, well, where's the last one? Well, maybe it's one of the kids. And based on the editing, I think maybe Nico is, which I mean, I guess that could help explain. See, the thing is that all of them have been behaving in one way or another out of character. Well, maybe not, possibly not Molly, but I feel like all the rest of them have said or done things that I also really like the part where early in the episode, the way that Zavin is talking, I feel like Carolina is like, is that really what I sound like? Because it's talking about like, oh, the light and this will fix everything, kind of. Yeah. And I guess that does pretty much cover. So yeah, I mean, when the episode started, I was wondering, because there's that line about the what was oh right, also appreciate that by the end of this episode, all 3 aliens do know exactly who each other are, because I feel like it wasn't that long ago that they didn't know for sure. Like, let's see, it was Victor and Tina knew, but the fact that Stacy was also one of the aliens was not always something they knew. But yeah, at the start of the episode, right before the intro plays, we have the thing about like, well, if the Runaways don't agree, then it's war. And what happens in war? And I'm sitting there thinking, well, I mean, based on recently in Trump's America, apparently when Americans wage war, they completely botch it and make really basic mistakes, but also do things they can't undo. So yeah, I guess Maybe Stacy the alien was looking into the future.